Ayatollah Khamenei tweeted almost every day, "Death to Israel."
Whom should we surrender to? Iran is not a nation to surrender.
You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do.
U.S. weighs on military action as Israel and Iran engage in a fierce missile exchange for the 8th consecutive day. Here's a look at all the top developments at this hour. A new wave of Iranian missiles fired at Israel. Through a social media post, Israeli military said defense systems are operating to intercept the threat while instructing the public to enter a protected space and remain there until further notice. Just a short while ago, Israeli military says its air force intercepted 2 more Iranian drones that triggered sirens in the Dead Sea area this morning. The interceptions came minutes after another Iranian UAV was intercepted over the same area. Iranian media has reported explosions east of Tehran. According to Fars news agency, Iranian air defense systems are operating against Israeli targets in the central and eastern regions of the capital. British Foreign Secretary David Lammy has said that after talks at the White House with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy to West Asia Steve Witkoff, that there is still time to reach a diplomatic solution with Iran over its nuclear program in a bid to avert a wider regional conflict. From Washington, Lammy is heading to Geneva, where he will hold high-level talks with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, as well as his counterparts from France, Germany, EU, Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has said that U.S. President Donald Trump will decide on whether the country will join Israel in the next 2 weeks, as there is still a substantial chance of talks to end the conflict. For more on this, we're now being joined live by Adrian Calomel. He's a fellow at Arabian Peninsula Institute and author of forthcoming book on Hezbollah. Thank you so much for joining us on WION World is One. I want to begin by asking you what your assessment of the current situation is, as well as the United States' role.
Great to see you, Aim, and good morning to all your viewers. Assessment of the current situation is the Islamic Republic is probably looking for a pause here. That's what they're trying to assess. Ultimately, I think they want to hold on to Fordo in some way, shape, or form. And the Trump administration is clear that this cannot be allowed. This is one of their most dangerous enrichment and militarization sites. So we're really kind of at an impasse here. Yeah, as I said from the beginning, Trump offered a diplomatic off-ramp, and that was complete dismantlement of the program, and Khamenei didn't take it. Now his entire nuclear program is really in peril and almost at risk of being completely wiped out. The issue is that with Fordo, that's going to probably trigger an American response, because to get to Fordo, it's built in the side of a mountain. You're going to need U.S. ordnance, and to fly those U.S. ordnances, you're going to need U.S. pilots.
Right, Mr. Calomel. That being said, do you think the United States' ask of a complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear program is a fair ask? Because we do know that, of course, Iran is not allowed to have a nuclear weapon, but it can retain its right to uranium enrichment, of course, when it's monitored. So do you think at this point it's a fair ask, and do you think Iran is going to see this as an incentive to come back to the negotiating table?
No, I think it is a fair ask because the IAEA shows it just came out with the report they've been in breach for quite a long time here. It's become clear that they are accelerating towards a weapon. They would be the first country that enriches and reprocesses that doesn't create a nuclear weapon. What the world is asking and what we want is for them to go the same pathway that the rest of the world goes through to achieve or get nuclear energy and nuclear things for nuclear use with related to medicine, etc. The peaceful purposes. That's what everyone does. It's on the open market, and it would have been a lot cheaper going that route than developing a covert nuclear program over the span of probably about 30-something years.
Right, Mr. Calmel, but just if you were to speak of the IAEA, now the agency director Rafael Grossi did emphasize that UN's Global Nuclear Energy Inspectorate possessed no proof that Iran was systematically attempting to move into a nuclear weapon. This is during an interview on the 17th of June, 3 days ago. He said this. So there was no proof. That being said, of course, we know that the United States and Iran were holding discussions before Operation Rising Lion was launched. There was an impasse even back then, but there was dialogue. That being said, do you think now Israel can achieve its objectives and the nuclear program, do you think it can truly be dismantled?
It can truly be dismantled, but again, Fordo is the final piece to this puzzle. The IAEA, I'll look back on them and their involvement with the Islamic Republic. It's been really difficult for Emmanuel Grossi. It's been they haven't been allowed access to certain points. They've actually had their cameras taken and I won't say held hostage, but taken and not allowed access to their cameras at certain times. So the monitoring hasn't really been, it hasn't been 100%. It hasn't been verifiable where you really need the verification. So he can neither confirm nor deny that they're racing towards the bomb, but everything they say basically tells you they are. And their threats, their threats are clear, and their desires have been clear when they're reaching up to 90%, and that was at a certain point during the Biden administration. You don't need that, and they're already talking about the uranium stockpiles and telling the Israelis that it's too late, we've already moved them, and we're already militarizing. So there's a clear, this is not just hyperbole, this is a clear move towards militarization. That's one of the fears, is that's what they're trying to do inside Fordo at the time being, is push towards that breakout, which was only 10 days, and the militarization window was always shrinking.
All right, Mr. Calmel, I'm going to take this opportunity to bring some of the other observations by some of the other experts that we've been speaking to as well. One being that we were speaking to Professor James A. Russell, who said that you cannot simply bomb Iran's nuclear program out of existence. Another observation that was made by one of the experts was that Iran is in a conflict with Israel, and there is the specter of the United States being involved as well. When we speak about them enriching uranium up to 90%, which of course is not what was allowed under the NPT either, and there hasn't been monitoring, you're right there. That being said, when we talk about the specter of nuclear threat and the existential war that Israel talks about, we've been hearing these statements since perhaps 1996. We've been hearing Netanyahu say this almost every single year, if not every other year. If not every single year. That being said, do you think this preemptive strike, what we're seeing right now, was perhaps a breakdown of the preemptive defense model in West Asia then?
Yeah, it absolutely is a breakdown. It's a breakdown of the entire monitoring system. The Islamic Republic tried to do it covertly through starting in 1992, 1994. That was the source of the AMIA bombing and the Israeli embassy bombing, because the Israelis in the U.S. put a halt to that. And then purposes. And then eventually they wiggled their way into this agreement, this JCPOA, which was supposed to address their nuclear weapons, but never was, because a bunch of the measurements, the snapback measurements, were never abided by the United Nations. And a major component that I think we're witnessing is that the ballistic missile part was never addressed. And that was another key component that was supposed to be there was a snapback measurement at the UN not to allow them to, one, sell those on the open market and to put an embargo on them with those. So, we're seeing failed policy, and that's been the problem. There hasn't been a policy towards the Islamic Republic over the 46 years than others saying they're bad. And then at a certain point, you have Obama come in and think that, giving them a pathway to a peaceful nuclear program was the way. But all along, they were trying to push towards a nuclear weapon, despite all claims that they aren't, and what the Supreme Leader says, and the fatwas, etc. The evidence is there, not just from the Israelis, but from other organizations, independent organizations outside of the international bodies.
Right, Mr. Calmel, and of course the obvious question now being what happens next. We know US President Donald Trump has said that he will decide in 2 weeks' time on the role and scope of the United States involvement, military involvement. So what happens next?
Well, that's a great question, because, you're right when one of your analysts said that you can't just do this from the air. You can't just bomb it into extinction. That's just not possible. And then Fordo is an example of that. So maybe we see something on the ground where we see the country start to rise up and creates the atmosphere where it's possible for commando raids or Israeli teams, to take out Fordo without involving the United States. That's a possibility. I think the hope for Trump is that he doesn't have to pull that trigger. We also have to look around the region. What else is going on? Hezbollah has been awfully quiet. The Iraqi proxies have been doing a lot of talking, but not a lot of action. But it looks like they're mobilized. We don't know what's coming next from where, and I think that's really part of the concern with this.
All right. Well, Mr. Calmel, thank you so much for joining us on WION World is One with your insights on this.
Always a pleasure, Haim. Thank you.